need a darker,
Yeah.
scarier opening.
We've seen so many like horror type movies.
We're done with horror movies.
We
I don't
need
want to watch.
something-
I don't want to watch another horror film.
I really want to do Nefarious just to round out a trilogy.
God,
I don't even know what that
possession
is.
movies.
I
It's
want to watch Judy Blume movies.
something
I
about.
want to
think
watch
the guy from Boondock Saints.
anything.
The other one, who wasn't in Walking Dead, not Daryl, and he's on death row, and he tells someone that, like a priest or someone, that they're going to kill a bunch of people. I don't know. I'm all for it. I would watch horror movies all day, every day. McCurdy's just PO'd because he's possessed by a demon that made him throw up in the parking lot of his daughter's school. Is that what happened?
No, it was at her dance class, but yeah, I'm just.
Why are you always
I
throwing
had
up
some-
at your daughter's
He's
dance shows?
possessed.
It's the alcohol, bro.
Yes.
He drinks so much. All
So
day,
much alcohol.
every day.
Weather.
All the alcohol.
Just
I
plays
have to,
Ocarina
but-
of Time and
Satan.
I have to.
drinks booze.
I have to because of all the shit Charlie puts me through. And dance,
Beast up.
I get that.
like people don't realize that.
Santa
But
Claus.
Well,
that's the
just
thing that we,
make a little
we deal with.
margarita.
Yeah.
That's
why
the
not?
thing we deal with all the time. you know.
Yeah.
Oh, let me zoom in.
There you go. The best part of the movie.
The best
it's
part
just
of the
like-
movie.
Or the best part.
It's
The best part
it's
of the
weird.
movie.
There's like some tonal stuff going on with this
I
movie.
love that though, because
That's
I'll
it's-
get to that in a minute.
This is me driving around Carmel on my Honda.
This
Oh, I
is
think
fucking
that
Batman.
worked
This
out.
is
My-
Batman on the Batphone.
Totally, dude. Yeah, but it makes sense. It
Oh.
makes sense that this priest is like got a good sense.
Shut
of
up.
humor. He should.
He needs to.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Well,
like
then
I
he says,
excused it
like,
to a degree.
No, he's like this. We're dealing with Satan, and Satan hates jokes. Satan is an asshole who doesn't like jokes. It's like that makes sense.
What did he keep
Right.
doing to the
Let me
nuns?
wait. Let me.
Cuckoo.
But wait.
Yeah.
Remind me.
Which is what
Remind me.
Blofeld does. Remember? Cuckoo.
Wait. Remind me though. The thing that happens in Spain, right?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
the Vince in the movie
whole
happened
movie?
in Spain. So
Mhm.
I am supposed to believe he drove his Vespa all the way from
Rome.
the Vatican
Yeah,
City in
whatever.
Rome.
You can
to
ship
Spain.
it. You can ship it. Come on. You can
Shut
put
up,
that
Charlie.
thing on an airplane.
They have money.
They have
He was
tons.
like,
Movie
"Here's
is
the
worse
deal,
than
Pope.
Cocaine Bear.
I'm gonna need
This
you to
movie
ship
is worse.
my Vespa."
You think the Pope doesn't
Ship
have
my
like an Air
Vespa.
Force One type of thing going on?
It's what the donations are for.
Exactly. All that cat like money. You think it goes to the port? No, dude.
What I find less believable is he used the Vespa to pull that well cover off.
That yes. He's like, this is my Batmobile.
Yeah. So it is. So it's a Vespa,
Exorcist
not a
mobile.
Vesper, right? I know. I've got.
Vespa.
I know I've got Bond in my brain, but
Yeah.
Vespa.
Yeah, it's a Vespa.
All right.
Vesper,
Anyway, we are
Vespa?
talking about Pope's Exorcist. In case you can't read, I guess it doesn't matter if you can't read because I'm not
can't
gonna
read.
put the name on the. I just like the poster rather than seeing the name on it.
Sure.
Why put Pope's butthole on there
I mean,
when
yeah.
you can just look at. I mean, look how cool he looks. Doesn't he look cool?
He looks
think he looks cool.
interesting.
Yeah. Right?
Sure.
Who doesn't like making movies, making songs?
He looks like
and
he's eating too
fly
many pizzas.
around the world with Russell Crowe. Anyway, enough dilly dallying. I think we're slap happy because McCurdy is drunk. Anyway,
I'm not even drunk. So good.
for the
God.
record, McCurdy ate something he shouldn't have.
I
Asked.
had something,
I didn't.
and I don't feel great.
Did you? Well, I'm sure you guys didn't notice, but on his Vespa, he had a Ferrari sticker.
You did. You can see it in that
It's a,
image.
maybe it's a Ferrari Vespa.
It's
I don't know.
Ferrari.
If you guys know what it is.
So, okay, you guys said that I sound quiet.
You
McCurdy,
sound fine now.
McCurdy sounds quiet.
Because I'm being quiet.
Maybe because you're sick. I still think you're possessed. Anyway, sorry, hang on. I gotta open up Audacity. Because you guys are always coughing.
The audacity of you being weak here.
Is anyone even watching us? Oh, K1's here.
Oh, kicks
Yeah.
ass.
I think Russell Crowe is why we saw this movie.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
It's the only reason we saw this movie. Come on.
Yeah.
Get out.
Okay.
Get out of here.
Setting up here, fellas. Let me kick this into. Boom.
Here we go.
A minimum.
There we go.
Okay. Pope's butthole. Okay. Sorry. Riss is calling me.
Pope's Exorcist?
I wish I could just turn. She's going to call back.
Call her back. Let me call her. Can I call?
Anyway. The Pope's Exorcist has one thing going for it, and his name is Russell Crowe. His quirkily optimistic Father Gabriele Amorth is a neat change of pace as far as professional exorcists go. Telling jokes and making bird noises at groups of nuns makes thematic sense, especially after he justifies it by telling his younger priest counterpart that the devil doesn't like jokes. Then this classic old priest and young priest pair are given proper backstories to weigh in on the trippy, it's all in your mind, satanic possession imagery to give context and meaning for their exorcism scenes. Cool. The movie also sets up some compelling world-ending stakes to go along with the typical, we must save this child's soul, smaller stakes. However, in the end, as much as the movie takes itself seriously at the starting line, the problem, as with most exorcism movies, is that expressing abstract spiritual matters on screen is very difficult, and so inevitably they fall back on special effects to the point that it looks like a wizard battle out of Harry Potter or Doctor Strange. On that note, they even go so far as to hint at this being the beginning of a Pope's Exorcist cinematic universe. But if that includes more fat Russell Crowe zipping around the world on a Vespa scooter, count me in.
A little Batman and Robin action at the end.
Yeah.
That was one of the tone things. It was like, what is happening?
What is this movie?
Yeah.
What is
like
this movie?
Like weird if this is the beginning of a series of movies, I would give it another shot, but
they need to nail down the tone.
something that we
I've seen a better version.
I
saw a better version of this movie.
What you're about to say.
Yeah, it was called The Exorcist. It came out in the 70s by a director named William Friedkin. It was this movie, but better because it didn't have a bunch of dumb franchise crap in it, and it was great.
But the franchise,
this movie's
stuff,
not.
I mean, like that's
just at the end.
After effect, yeah.
That's why I thought like this movie was like it's like Sony was like, oh, we can make our own Conjuring universe because Warner Brothers has the Conjuring, which was based around
on this couple, and then we have
based off the Warren couple who actually had all these crazy things that they supposedly say, oh yeah, we did all like very similar to this, right? But it's like, oh, but the Catholic Church had this guy, and let's make a franchise around him.
It's not the Warners.
It is the Warrens. The Warrens.
Yeah. So it's like let's take everything that they did and Hollywoodize it and make it like big.
But again, I saw a lot of stuff in this movie was the same as The Nun, which was another movie that was a Conjuring movie. So I was like, this feels like. Anyway, let's step in. Let's talk about the things I did find interesting about this movie because there was stuff that I was like, let me crack it open because.
Yeah.
You know what? You don't know how long I'm going to last today.
I can't wait for you to puke. And then Nance's
I hope I puke.
Asmodeus.
All right.
That was Asmodeus, right? Asmodeus was
the demon in the movie is Asmodeus, which I guess
and
is a demon that makes people do lustful things, which makes sense for the Robin to Russell Crowe's Batman.
But he's also he is considered the king of hell. But he's like the king of hell and demons and daemons.
Apparently it's a big deal.
Which it's
a real thing.
If it becomes a series, I'm all about him going off to next time he goes to Germany to battle Beelzebub. I'm for it. You know, I'm for it. It may not be good, but I'm for it.
It ends in a weird video game where there's 199 other locations on Earth we have to shut down. Yeah. And it's this weird brutalist 80s office building, which seemed like a joke to me. Like all these
Well, that was like that was
doing
some
office
Vatican stuff, though. Like that looked like
but I guess I've
that
never
was Q's
seen
office.
It. I've never thought of it.
Remember though, he was supposed to be Russell Crowe was supposed to be the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde for the Dark Universe, and so
it's
now
gonna be like a
he's
similar
not doing
thing.
That
Right?
he's gonna do this.
He's gonna do something. All right, let's talk about. Oh wait, hold on before I talk about Pope's Exorcist. Buy our merch because we still have merch, and I think people had forgotten. Charlie's
booze.
I think we're just telling K1 to buy our merch.
Charlie,
I don't know if anyone else is here.
You know what? I don't care. Someone will eventually watch it. But Charlie's got new merch.
Do you have extras of those? I have to come over and sleep over and take a new.
Charlie, show off that merch again. Show that off. Big screen. Here we go.
There's Nans.
Oh yeah.
Face.
Daniel Craig Nans.
There's Craig Nans.
And there's you are
George Lazenby me.
Lazenby you. And I don't think I'm based on any. Maybe I'm Pierce Brosnan.
You look like a Bond
kind
villain.
of Piercy, but
maybe Pierce
kind of Bond villainish.
Yeah. But I mean,
it's a really cool mug
for myself.
Is it white?
It's white.
It almost looks baby blue.
White. Well, that's because white balances piss.
Yeah. He got baby blue eyes. He got that
stuff
baby
all the way around.
All right, so let's talk about this movie, starting with the real Father Gabriele Amorth.
I'm glad you're going into this because I didn't have time to look into him, and I was curious.
It's a real thing. He was born in 1925 and died in 2016 at 91 years old. He has been described as the James Bond of exorcism. So no wonder Charlie likes this movie so much. Father Amorth is in 2013 had reported
all those chicks. He exorcises their demons, and then he gets laid. He's just like James Bond, through and through. You know what I'm saying?
Going to hell. He reported in 2013 that he had performed 1,600,000 exorcisms. I should note that
1,600,000. Holy cow!
What?
No. That is not.
That
is not individuals. That is not based off individuals. That number is based off rituals. So, like, there could be somebody who had to have multiple rituals done to them. So one could, multiple performed. As we see in the movie, Father Amorth fought in World War II in the Italian resistance movement and also practiced law.
Good for him not being a fascist.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put a video in the description by I've posted some of these in the
Is it pro Mussolini stuff?
Shut up. I've put some of this stuff in the Discord before, and it's the Y Files, which is one of my favorite YouTube channels, but he did a whole video about stuff about the terrifying truth, possessions and exorcisms are real, and a lot of it is about Gabriele Amorth. So
Gabriel had a YouTube
good video. I'll put it.
He had a YouTube channel too. He was like, "Let me show you how to."
He live streamed exorcisms.
Live stream exorcisms
for the clout.
He got a lot of subscribers too.
Doing his like Bond thing, like he walks out in like the whatever, like the gun barrel.
But it's a cross.
It's a power.
It's a cross.
Tells you. Yeah, it's a cross.
It's a cross.
It's holy water instead of blood.
Yeah, instead it is like and then he turns.
That sounds like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
it does sound like a Lord. Everything goes back to Lord of the Rings.
and then he throws holy water at you.
All right, so this film is based on two of his books.
The squirt gun has holy water in it.
Shut the fuck out of here. This film is based off two books. An Exorcist Tells a Story and An Exorcist More Stories. Funny, the interesting fact, my favorite fact about him is he held the belief that yoga is satanic, along with reading Harry Potter. Yay Catholicism. My wife's gonna hurt me after she hears me say that. So anyway, moving on. This movie was directed by Julius Avery. Avery is an Australian screenwriter and director. Some of his credits include Son of a Gun from 2014 that starred Ewan McGregor, 2018 Overlord, which was produced by J.J. Abrams, and most recently Samaritan, the superhero drama that starred Sylvester Stallone, which I believe you can watch now on Amazon Prime. And then we've got our writers here, Michael Petroni and Evan. Kill me now. That's his last name. Is just Spinopoulos. Very Greek name. Petroni is an again, another Australian screenwriter. His credits include, this is what I love. His credits include The Right, Queen of the Damned, Dangerous Lives of an Altar Boy, Possession, and The Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Do you see a theme?
There
Do
was
you see a theme? And then he also created the show Messiah on Netflix.
That is a good show.
I would not be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he's Catholic or grew up Catholic, but
no doubt.
He writes a lot of
show
stuff.
Should not have been canceled, and it was, unfortunately. But I would still recommend watching it because it was.
And then Evan on the other hand is a Greek American writer with credits including films like Snake Eyes, the G.I. Joe spinoff, The Unholy, and then he did the Beauty and the Beast remake, and I'm not kidding, a slew. I think he wrote every single one of those like direct to DVD Disney sequels because that's most of his credits. Which is such a weird
pattern here.
It's such a weird, that's the second half of the movie, right?
Goofy
there.
stuff.
That's
exorcism stuff.
Exorcism stuff.
The pattern being like this. Parts of this are like a straight to video, but not all.
A lot of it is a straight to video. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Of course, we've got Russell Crowe. Crowe had his film debut in 1990's Blood Oath. We all probably best know him for Gladiator, A Beautiful Mind, and Cinderella Man. But even more so, he is known for making movies, writing songs, and fighting around the world.
Come on, Tugger! Well,
you have to say it straight faced. You have to say it straight faced. He's known for making movies, writing songs, and fighting around the world. Like everyone knows that.
Yeah.
You don't know that? Fuck you. All right. We got Daniel Zovato. So Zovato has roles in movies like It Follows, which is one of my favorites. Don't Breathe, which we talked about.
What was he in It Follows?
I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. But when I looked it up, it was like, oh yeah, he was in It Follows. It's been a while since I've seen it.
That's one of my favorite.
I remember I do love that.
You kept making me think of the character who played, or the actor that plays Niki Lauda in Rush. I forget.
Sure. Niki Lauda is better though.
But yeah, and he was also in Don't Breathe, which we mentioned last week, or sorry, not last week, Sunday, talking about the director of that who directed the Evil Dead remake, not the one that came out.
He didn't play the Mr. Cool guy whose mom ends up banging him and killing him.
Maybe.
Right? Maybe he would have been a lot younger.
Like he could play a cool game.
That's the only character that he looks like. But he was like,
I would have to go back and look.
He was like the guy with the long hair who like got all the babes, and then the chick was like, "I need you to bang me in this hospital bed."
Are we seeing a theme? The theme is he has problem with having sex with women. That is his theme. Moving on.
Young women that he shouldn't be.
We're gonna see a theme with every person on this list. Just FYI, because here's Alex Essos. She has a theme. She's in horror movies. That's all she does is horror movies.
Yeah.
She has been in a ton of horror films and TV shows, including Midnight Mass, Death to Me, Haunting of Bly Manor, and then she also played Wendy in the Shining sequel, Dr. Sleep, which is that one photo right there. But I just thought it was weird that like every single one of her things is all horror
Haunting
films.
of Bly Manor.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, great. Next, another name that I'm going to kill myself over. Peter DeZos. I don't even know what this is.
Honey.
I mean, they just cast him because he's weird looking.
He is weird looking.
He's actually makeup on him to make him look like the devil has taken him.
He is. He's one of the best parts of the movie, honestly. Like I think, it's impressive that he was able to pull that performance off as far as having to match someone's voice and do all that stuff.
Sometimes he did too much of this. Like that was distracting.
I will kill you. You're going to die.
Like, you don't like they were like you'll really sell it if you move like a snake. It's like no, like just talk.
He's a snake.
Well, I think Asmodeus has a serpent for a tail or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it also has three heads,
but all the same, it's like you don't have to do that constantly, incessantly, but whatever. And then we've got Laurel Marsden. She's 21. She has a role in Miss Marvel and All Fun and Games. Great. But the final person on this list,
Franco Nero, who plays the frickin' Pope.
No, was he the Pope? I thought he was a bishop.
No, this guy's the Pope.
I thought he was
because Pope is all white. No. Pope is an all white.
Okay, because at some point he was like, "My boss is the bishop of whatever." I guess he said I was appointed by whatever bishop.
That's because the bishop of the Vatican is the Pope. That's how that works.
Yeah, he's like, my boss is the top guy.
Yeah. Good to know.
Okay. I should have got my wife to come down here and ask any Catholic questions.
Is he in John Wick?
Yes, he's in John Wick 2. And but he's most famous for playing Django, the spaghetti western version of Django, the original Django. And then he did a series of those movies. That franchise ended up becoming what Django Unchained is, as far as like why Tarantino had based it off of. But that's Tarantino the same actor.
Put him in Django Unchained. Like
he's the. But he's like, he was in the spaghetti westerns back all the way. I think it was the 60s. I want to say it's the 60s or the 70s. But he plays the Pope, plays the freaking Pope.
Yeah.
And then finally, I don't really have any fun things after this. I just want to know what Nance thought of this movie.
Go.
It's the best photo.
I was more interested in this movie than, inevitably we're gonna compare it to Evil Dead Rise. I was more interested in the story in this one, but I think Evil Dead Rise pulls off what they're trying to pull off better than this one did.
Okay, because
I thought this one was okay.
I'm right there with you so far as the comparison, but I thought that the story elements were better set up. That was my big thing with Evil Dead Rise, was like, you have all this impressive, well-produced imagery, but I don't care because there's no story stuff. Whereas with this, they took time to set up story stuff.
Yeah.
And those were the elements I appreciated. But this movie has the same third act syndrome that Missing and Megan have, which is, what do we do? How about like Megan is like, how about a big robot fight? Which McCurdy said before, he's like, well, they set that up. I don't care if they set it up. It's still setting up. Just setup and payoff isn't good on its face.
I think we're agreeing. I was more invested in the story of this one.
But didn't you just say, though,
but I think there was some weird quirks and tone and stuff that threw me off. Where Evil Dead Rise is much more.
I liked Evil Dead Rise a lot more than this movie. I thought that this movie was just kind of laughable, like, and not in a good way. Like, yes, Charlie, they do mention it's like, oh, the devil doesn't like jokes, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't account for like him riding around in Vespa and then you shoot shots like he's fucking Batman in The Dark Knight. I just thought that part was silly.
I
liked them as a guilty pleasure.
He wore funny hats with his.
I liked that as
like, how far could they go?
I liked it as a guilty pleasure.
I need to be chill.
But
I liked it as a guilty pleasure, but like
was this movie?
But also, again, I stand by what I said earlier. I've seen this movie before. I've seen it done better, and in 2 movies, not just one. But The Exorcist, which is,
but dude, like you could say that like about
no movie top
a lot of these.
You say it about every movie. Shut up.
No. Like Creed 3. I've seen a better Creed 3. It's called Creed 1.
But it's I think
Ant-Man.
I think when it comes to this, it's better, like, Yeah, well, Ant-Man, I would argue, would be like more like Star Wars and
we're going to be be this to movies like Plane. So like the original Exorcist would be at the top of this list in a heartbeat. This being something of a knockoff, we still have to.
This
judge
is
it
a
on
very
true.
So, but here's the thing: it's like when you see, I just feel like it doesn't do anything relatively new with exorcism, other than like, oh, he has the mind thing, and I'm like, it's fine. I've seen it in other movies. It didn't blow me away. And then the only thing that like at least got me a little interested in the movie, where I was like, okay, this is a little different, was then it became the thing that's also kind of really corny and cheesy, which feels like it's the second writer's thing. It was like, oh, what's going on with this abbey? Oh, this abbey's actually been cursed. And like, we don't even like, God's not even at this abbey, which God's everywhere, but and like there, that, but that was the more interesting thing
about the
but
Spanish
again,
Inquisition. So
I was also like, oh, but again, I saw this kind of same thing in The Nun a couple of years ago, which was a Conjuring movie, which feels like this movie's trying to capitalize on being a like you could have fit this movie into the Conjuring universe easily. Like this could have been a Conjuring film. Of course, it's done by a different studio and everything else, and it's under a different group of filmmakers, all that stuff. But like it felt like, oh, let's try to make Sony's version of The Conjuring. And I was also like, yeah, all of the stuff with the Abbey and like finding out that the Abbey's been cursed and all that stuff. Like I've seen all this before.
The whole thing with that though was it was like usually exorcism movies come down to just trying to save the victim, right? Those are generally the stakes. So what I did appreciate was it was like, well, hang on, there's a whole separate element here that to provide some context. Basically, what they realize as they piece together, like it takes place at this abbey that this family is trying to renovate, restore. And the little boy, like some workers kind of they break some things that may have been like holy seals that unleash the demon, and it takes hold of the little boy. So it's a little boy, his sister, and his mom. That's the family. Yeah. Dad died a year ago in a car accident. Mm-hmm. And so once Father Amorth shows up, he kind of starts investigating the place, and because he sees the papal seal, like the seal of the Vatican, the cross keys on a couple of things. So he's like, okay, this place is not just any old place. And he starts digging, and it is in Spain, so it's a site of the Spanish Inquisition, which was a really brutal, very corrupt time the Catholic Church has obviously been around for thousands of years, and it has a history of corruption. And one of the worst things it ever did was persecuting the Spanish Inquisition. And what they realize is really fucking interesting, which is the Spanish Inquisition was headed up by the devil himself, because the devil overtook a famous exorcist. And specifically, it was like, that was somewhat unclear of whether or not it was like
they go through it pretty
he
quick.
Took over an exorcist, and then that exorcist was like the main like force.
Yeah, that's when it feels like comic book shit. It's like this movie became comic book shit. Right when they said that, I was like, okay.
Very interesting to say that the Spanish Inquisition was headed up by the devil, pretending.
So you're telling me? So are we going to get a sequel?
Like you're a good guy, but you're not.
Right? Are we going to get this sequel where it takes place in Boston, and they find out that all these priests that were molesting kids was because of this devil?
Yeah. Right.
Get out of here, dude.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense. Where it's
right.
Like, why?
So nobody has to take on their personal sins. It's all like the devil did it. I'm like, great, got it.
Oh, please.
But
that's one of the things is that people often want to say, well, religion isn't perfect. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're a good person. And I go, yeah, duh. Nothing is perfect. But just because something bad happens, people then blame God instead of blaming people. But at the end of the day, that's one of the main themes of this movie is that they're like the Pope says, he's like, evil is an idea to a lot of people versus being a force. And for me, I wrote an entire book about the idea
of this movie made me think of
evil. I like and how those elements, like how God has an idea and the devil an idea, and how those forces play within stories. That's the book that I wrote. And on that
especially
note,
with that theme of like priests that are like, we don't need you anymore. Exorcisms, that's not a thing anymore. And the Pope and Russell Crowe both like, no, you gotta
that's when
you always gotta be fighting evil.
That's also real evil was his point.
That was also the point.
Time people just need a hug. 2% of the time it actually is a demonic force. And so this book I wrote at the outset, I say, hey, I can't give you any definite. I can't there's nothing I could say that could prove the existence of God or prove the existence of the devil or whatever. But I loved the quote that opened this movie, which was basically that it was from Gabriel, and it was like, every time, what was it? It was like
something like when people when the devil laughs.
People, yeah, like when people. Let me put it this way. I think the cause for rampant atheism these days, when you really go down to like the psychology of it, I think a lot of people feel safer because they go through this thought process of, well, we have all this technology today. We don't need God. But also, if God isn't real, then the devil isn't real. And I think the devil and demons freak out most people. And if you believe in God, then you also have to believe in Satan. Yeah. And I think a lot of people feel better when they go ahead and pretend like the devil isn't real. And the moment that they realize they could be fucking wrong, I think that freaks them out. I think psychologically they take comfort in being like, okay, demons aren't real. But for religious people watching movies like this, it can really freak them out, because it is a scary concept that, like the devil is a really fucking terrifying concept. So, but for me, I can't approach religion emotionally. I have to approach it logically. So that's what my book is about, because otherwise, the moment you start talking about fantastical stuff, atheists just go la 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 la, so you have to approach it logically. And so that's kind of what the Pope was getting at, was like, people see evil as an idea. And I agree. Like until Satan looks me in the face, all I have is the concept of evil. And that's what I write about. But I think it's important that people understand that, I think a lot of people fall to the meaninglessness of like postmodernism, and then they use that to justify poor behavior, because what it comes down to is behavior. But then the whole point of this movie, stories like this are, that's 98% of the time. But what about the 2% where it really is satanic? I can't speak to that. I don't have those stories, but apparently this Gabriel guy does. Whether that's ultimately true or not, I have no idea. But ultimately, a movie like this has to take that stuff and run with it. They Hollywood takes hold, and then they turn it into a Conjuring movie or whatever. But the concepts still hold, which is that opening quote is like, when people suddenly go, no, evil doesn't exist, suddenly they start justifying a lot of evil shit. And so I go, well, what's the difference? Whether it's supernatural or not, you're justifying a lot of evil shit. So those are the things that I appreciate here. But overall, it's like good story stuff. Even though like the whole first act is very much like a serious movie, and it's actually beautiful.
Hold on, you mentioned the scene where he's in front of the other the cardinals and stuff. Yeah. And the first thing I thought, like, this is the thing about this movie that kind of makes me laugh every time I was thinking about it, was like they took the structure of a buddy cop movie and put it and like they that's what this movie is. It's a buddy cop movie, but it's in the structure of
control.
Usually these movies start off with the rogue. You get the rogue
judge, motherfucker, and then he throws all.
Give me your bat. Yeah, give me your crucifix and your wafer,
holy water squirt gun.
But that was the vibe I got at that scene where they were just like, you're out of your league. You're doing all this crazy stuff, but I'm friends with the chief, like exactly. I was just like, yeah, this is a buddy cop movie.
Yeah. Okay. Real quick though. Let me nail this. So 2023 stands at Beau Is Afraid, Infinity Pool, John Wick 4, Air, Creed 3, Shazam 2, Dungeons and Dragons 17, Megan Missing, Scream 6, the Mario movie, Ant-Man, Quantumania, Renfield, Evil Dead Rise, Magic Mike 3, Knock at the Cabin 1, Plane, somehow going to have a sequel, or 17, and Cocaine.
This is going to get a sequel too. I didn't say that.
I'm telling you, just like the Mummy movie, just like I said about the Mummy movie, I would love
this movie, if this became a series. Didn't spend a lot on this. I mean, this movie was like 17 mil. They made 55 mil at the box office. I mean, that's success right there. Like I love when people get like, they're like, oh, but it didn't make all this money. I'm like, and they're like, why did this get a sequel? It's like people forget.
Beau isn't making any money, right?
No, but Beau, like the thing about Beau is like, Ari Aster doesn't give a shit about making a sequel to that movie. Nobody gives a shit about making a sequel to that movie.
Well,
he's going to make...
But B, if they did, like he's too classy of a dude to allow that to happen.
He's not going to make a sequel to Beau Is Afraid. But a movie like... No, he doesn't
like
need
Hereditary 2, Midsummer 2, no.
Fuck off.
He would rather kill himself. If they made him do it, he'd be like, well, just kill myself.
But those are art films. But my point though is like you just have to beat yourself.
Infinity Pool 2.
You got to make enough money to make it justifiable. Like it's like, Plane only made, they only made Plane for what, 20 mil or something like that. They're like it made $20, and then they made $100 off. It's like, sure, yeah, let's make a sequel to that.
Real quick,
people went
you
and saw
guys
the
are
first one.
thinking. You guys are thinking ballpark. Like McCurdy, you said as low as plain.
I think
It's
it's next to
definitely
plain.
below Evil Dead Rise.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think this is a high level movie. I just think that
not
considering
high.
like, yeah, it's so corny to me. Like this movie just feels beyond corny.
You have to get The Exorcist out of your head. You can't be judging this just because of The Exorcist.
You do the same thing, bro.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't. Evil Dead Rise. I'll admit, I went into Evil Dead Rise with high expectations because of Evil Dead movies, but that doesn't change my overall ranking. I went into this with low expectations and liked it more than I thought I would. Evil Dead, I like. Let me real quick talk about that because where are my notes? Because Evil Dead, again, one of the big things I complained about was not really setting up any kind of story to care about, and then just kind of throwing in some like mommy elements that never really congealed, never had that moment of like, I'm right there with you, babe, like get out of here with these kids. So my thought when I was able to think about it more was that I think a more effective story would have been if the movie, like, again, forget about the bookends, no cabin stuff, because that stuff was stupid.
Yeah,
that
I
stuff
agree.
was stupid.
We all
face,
agree
but
the
also a
cabin
waste of
stuff was
time.
dumb.
Yeah. So then, so I think the movie should have opened up with kind of as we saw the main woman, the sister, finding out she's pregnant, and I think she should have gotten an abortion. I think it should have just opened up with like this kind of just like kind of eerily having her get an abortion in a I mean, you could do some fucked up shit with that, right? But that would kind of be this like original sin that then when she showed, just like in the Evil Dead remake, when the sister is a drug addict, right? So you have this damage, you have this sin that has occurred. And then, so then the sister in her guilt, and she's kind of guilty in general that she's pregnant, but then add the abortion on top. So she shows up, her sister, the mom, has like her own stuff going on with the husband having left or whatever, and the kids are kind of crazy. She tells her sister, and her sister comforts her, but also reminds her that she's a bit of a fuck up, and maybe it's not even her first abortion, whatever. But then once the mom is possessed, then she would really let her have it. Like she would tell her what she really, because that's what a lot of these possession movies are about, is like we talk to each other, people talk to each other and they kind of sugarcoat things and they're nice, but then the possessed person, who is more or less a demon, lets them have it. They say the most terrible things, and you saw that in Pope's Exorcist, where it's like you can't go in there with any sins on your mind, because he, like, that demon will speak to it and he will crack you. And you see that very early on, where the young priest, I like the scene where Gabriel's like, we need to forgive your sins to go in there. And he's like, okay, forgive me, Father, if I've sinned. It's been 8 months since my last confession. And he's like,
whoa,
oh my God,
we don't have time for this.
Holy shit, 8 months? Like, oh my God. He's like, you feel bad, right? You feel really, really bad? Okay, you're forgiven.
I forgive you of all of it.
Yeah, well, like, we don't have time for that. And then it turns out that, he had been banging a young woman of his congregation. And then later you find out that he was actually in love with her, and maybe he was good to her, but he still broke up with her. So he's still kind of a dirtbag. But anyway, the point being that that's that's a common trope, that these demons do that. So then, like, once the sister is possessed, she really lets her have it, and straight up telling her, your baby is waiting for you in hell, I think would be really fucking effective. What we got was like, oh, there's another soul here in your belly and all that. But I think straight up telling, like, your baby waits for you in hell. Like, you flushed that. You flushed it like a turd. Like that shit would be a lot more effective. And then what that would then do would inspire her to protect her nieces and nephews as their kind of like sudden surrogate replacement mom, because mom's possessed. And that then would be more believable, that she would suddenly be like, okay, I did make a horrible mistake, but I'm going to protect these kids. Because what you had was, eventually she was protecting the little girl, but it was like the older two kids die immediately before any real kind of like connection can be made with them, which was kind of a misfire. And then, like, you did have this thematically, you had this odd clash of like protecting the young girl, but also being like, I'm going to become a mom. You know what I mean? As opposed to already having aborted a baby and then that inspiring her to be like, I would give my life to save this little girl. You know what I mean? Like those elements would have worked better. Instead, it was just messy. It was just very messy. But with this movie, it was cleaner. Everything was set up to the point where once it was time to go in for that final exorcism, I was like, okay, cool. Like what's going to happen? Because the way we lead into that final exorcism was probably the creepiest part of the movie, which is that the mom is looking for her 2 kids. The boy's been possessed for a while, but we hear the daughter giggling, and she goes into the room, and they're on the bed holding hands, and everything that the boy says the girl is saying at the same time, and vice versa. Like everything that they're speaking like almost like puppets. Like they're saying the same words, and it's really fucking creepy until she gets the girl away from the brother, and then that leads into we've set up like basically what they set up is and I've never seen it in an exorcism movie. I could be wrong, but it's like the same old of like we got to save the boy. But then the whole thing is that this place that we already said was the site of the Inquisition that was led by the devil, which, again, I thought was really fucking interesting as far as theology goes. The devil is looking to do the same thing. He wants to take over an important member of the Vatican, which is the Pope's exorcist. He wants to take over Gabriel so that he can essentially do the same thing he did before, where he could lead a Vatican, charge in the world under the guise of
so he wants an inside guy.
Exactly. He's looking for an inside man. And he knows that if he can use these kids as poker chips, because he already has the death of this girl. So again, to backtrack, I mean, these things are set up well, where he had a case where he deemed that this young girl wasn't possessed. He was like, no, she's just a psych case. Like 98% of the time, it's a psych case. 2%, it's the devil.
And I like how he kind of whittles that stuff down, because he asks questions like, and it opens with him doing an exorcism.
Yeah.
And they're like, he's speaking English and he shouldn't know English. And he's like, well, does he watch TV?
Yeah.
Like, there's other ways he can know English.
Yeah.
Like he's very analytical.
And he went in with "You're Satan," right? So it was like, because usually it ends up being like a lower tier demon, not the devil himself, right? So he's like, "You're Satan," and the boy's like, "Yeah, I'm Satan," and he's like, "Okay, sure." Immediately he knows it's not Satan, that this kid is just kind of like has like some kind of temporary madness or whatever. So so that's the so you're right. Like he that's where he kind of set up like he's a pro, and he even says it's a lot of it is theatrics, like, and that's a very real thing with exorcisms, that the ones that are just psych stuff have an effect on them, right? And that's a real thing. And that's where it's like, is it scientific or is it more like emotional? It's more on the emotional side. So anyway, so he has his backstory is that same thing that happened with the boy in the opener happened with this girl who, I mean, straight up bit the head off a bird. I don't know. That seems like some satanic shit, but she ends up killing herself. So that weighs on his, on that's like his sin that weighs on his him. Guilt. That's where he feels bad. And that's where this demon knows kind of using these kids as a bargaining chip would lead to him saying, okay, take me instead, spare the boy, spare these, and he took the girl at one point too. So it was like, spare these kids and take me. And that's what the demon wanted from the get-go. He wanted Russell Crowe. The problem is that everything that comes after that, and that was where I was really excited. I was like, oh, are we about to see Russell Crowe? Like I would have loved if that happened halfway through the movie. And then the second half of the movie was like, he starts in on Inquisition 2, like it goes to the world ending stuff, right? Because to your point, McCurdy, how many times have we seen the kid's possessed. We got to save the kid. And
Yeah, that's
they
what
go
I
in
mean.
the room,
It's
and it's like sprinkle some holy water on them. They're like, and then they're like, fuck me, fuck you, and then the bed shakes.
That's why I was bored with the movie. That's why I was bored with the movie, because it was a lot of the same things that I've like. The Exorcist did the same thing, and I know you're like, well, you can't compare it to other movies. I'm like, yeah, you have to. When you're like, if you're gonna compare a Bond movie with a Bond movie, you can compare an Exorcist movie with an Exorcist movie. I don't see any problem with that.
Sure.
But I do think that, like, at the end of the day, I'm like, I've seen all this. This isn't new. This isn't scary. Of course, the girl's gonna, contort her body and crawl on the wall, and that's gonna be scary.
Movies, though. We're
ranking.
You're
gonna do fuck me and all this stuff.
2023 movies.
Right.
We're putting this up against.
But again,
Magic Mike's Last Dance.
Yeah, I would have rather seen that movie over.
Would you honestly have rather seen?
No, if I'm being honest, like, the more we're talking about it, I probably would see it over Magic Mike's Last Dance. But it's only because of the comic book dumb shit that I'm like, all right, it's kind of fun.
I am at, as Nan said at the outset, I am at putting it up right against Evil Dead Rise.
I think you can put it up against it. I don't think it wins.
And why is that?
I just think Evil Dead Rise is much more focused.
I just have trouble with the story elements. I thought that there was the story elements were set up here, whereas in Evil Dead the emphasis was just on chainsawing heads. Which if you're gonna do that same thing of comparing it within its own franchise,
and we put John Wick
like we've
4
seen
at the top because
Evil
of
Dead
its
really
action,
new.
right?
Huh?
We put John Wick at the top because of its action. I don't think there's anything.
John Wick 4 is that like I've been talking a lot about essence lately, right? The essence of a John Wick movie is extremely well executed action, elegantly shot, coupled with the stoic kind of Clint Eastwood John Wick character.
But that sort of analysis only works
of an incredibly well-built universe of assassins. John Wick 4 was the crescendo of that whole series. Extremely well done. Kevra, friend of the channel, talks a lot of shit about John Wick. I'm like, dude, essence. Maybe you don't you compare John Wick to something like The Matrix or whatever, because they really are apples and oranges, because the essence of The Matrix directly has to do with the philosophy of the story and reality and all that, blah, blah, blah. John Wick is a completely different beast entirely. So putting John Wick 4 near the top, it deserves to be up there based on its essence. But if you're going to compare it to, that's why comparing it to something like Infinity Pool, that's why it's easy to put it above something like Shazam, Creed, and Air. Because it nails its essence and is extremely well executed, right? Anyway, that's the fun of doing this, because you're comparing apples and oranges and bananas and pears all the way down the fucking list. But I could see putting, on that note, I could see putting it below Evil Dead Rise based off of the execution of Evil Dead Rise. But I still just think Evil Dead Rise was like undermining the essence of Evil Dead by not providing any kind of, like, the other Evil Dead movies use the book.
Yeah, and for me, it's a standalone, because I haven't seen the other Evil Deads.
Sure.
And it's harder to use an essence argument for a standalone rather than a sequel.
But all the same, though, my point there is that the book, the Necronomicon, generally would provide structure and direction for the story, whereas Evil Dead Rise was just a chaotic mess. It was just like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, with no context of like, let's go back to the book and we find this incantation, and if we do this, then this will happen, but then if we also do this, don't do this, or this will happen, and then we have a plan, and then the plan goes south. It was just chaotic mess.
They tried to do that, but then they're like, we just gotta get the heck out of here.
Yeah, I think my talk against some Evil Dead Rise in this movie. I think you are really hung up on context and rules, and I'm not always like that. There's times when I'm like, yes, I understand. Like you have to understand the verisimilitude of the film to understand. Like, okay, how does all this stuff work? Like Inception, right?
Word, please.
Like if you have a film like Inception, which I think is a great example, right? How does all of the elements of this world work? Does it work in, like how does the dream thing work? You have to explain all those elements for that for you to understand, because it's not our normal world. Does everything in the world of this, whatever it is, does it all work together, right?
Yeah.
For Evil Dead, I sometimes I'm like, I don't necessarily need to understand every little detail of why everything's happening. I know we get a very quick glimpse of like, these are the horrible things that do happen. And when it comes to those things, where I like Evil Dead a lot more is like, it's just way more weirdly inventive on how like horrific it can get. There is the one thing that you and I mean, we talked about that we agreed on last time about as far as like, the mom, not, that's a scary idea, is if the mom turns to her child and is like, sorry, baby, don't hurt me, like things like that, which I feel like this movie does a slightly better job in trying to convey. But there's other things where
the boy is like, he comes back and he's like, mom, and then he's like, mother's love is the closest thing to God's love. You need to tell your kid
he
boy love him,
Yeah, but and it's like, you have those moments in this movie. I think the thing is that this movie just plays too many cliches for me to give a shit. Where I'm like, I saw that before, it's not scary. I'm sorry, like it's not. Versus I had a physical reaction to Evil Dead Rise. Like I almost threw up at one point in time for a girl eating glass and like puking it up. I was like, that's fucking disgusting. I did. I literally was like, I almost threw up. I was like,
I think the
God.
cheese grater was grosser. Yeah. I'm glad they didn't really go into depth with that.
Here's the thing. I think that at least Evil Dead doesn't rely on as many cliches as far as like, oh, you've seen the Possession movie. Congratulations. Like Evil Dead in itself has always been kind of inventive when it comes to possession and like the gore factor of it. So in that movie, I was like, this is interesting. I'm like more engaged with what's going on the screen. The things that I was engaged with Pope's Exorcist is like, okay, like we're setting this up as a franchise. He's Pope James Bond. He's the buddy cop James Bond. And now I'm like,
those elements
the more you say it,
it's
the
like
more you say it, the more you're like, this is kind of it's kind of a silly movie when you say it, because then you're like, oh, wait, so they go to this abbey and they find this map and it's like, oh, the devil's been to all these other places. We got to stop the devil. Okie dokie.
That was like in the last 2 minutes of the movie, though. Like,
it's not even the end of the movie. It's like in the middle of the movie.
My counter to that is that
saying that's when I was like, okay, maybe I'm a little on board with this because it's a little different. It's a little inventive, but at the same time, I was like, this is like every adventure movie.
The Spanish Inquisition stuff. That was the stuff that was like, okay, there's more to this than gotta save the little kid.
I feel like they zoomed past all that stuff though, that like it was just like
the Spanish Inquisition stuff is like the equivalent to being like, okay, like
I'm not familiar with the Spanish Inquisition though, so it's like I really need
essentially what happens was that like
I'm saying for the movie though, they really need to go.
It'd be like
what happens is
the Holocaust was Satan.
Yeah, it was
a lot of people do
Catholic.
believe.
Yeah, the Catholic Church basically murdered a bunch of people who didn't believe in Catholicism, that didn't convert. Essentially, that's what they were trying to talk about.
That's what all those heads were and everything.
They're like, these are the people that didn't convert. They murdered them and then sliced their heads off and did all this.
My point though before was that the Evil Dead, all Evil Dead has is shocking visuals. As you said, you're like, I almost threw up. Somebody grabs a cheese grater and goes on a leg, and I go, that's the same.
And I did think, and I still think,
a plane had a really good shootout, and I go, yeah, who cares?
If plane didn't have any good shootouts, what are you talking about?
What?
Plane didn't have any good shootouts.
The airstrip shootout at the end is cool.
The only thing we said that was good about Plane was
the guy
that
had
there
a
was
50 cal.
It was like, well, it has a good shootout at the end. It's like, yeah,
There's
but who cares?
50 cal in it.
Like if you don't give a fuck.
50 cal was fun.
Fun, but that's
50 cal was kind of fun.
Then go to
but
YouTube.
That's like,
then go to YouTube and say guy shoots 50 cal, and it's like you could watch that. But if you're gonna,
no,
movie,
here's my counter argument to that though. My counter argument to that is that Evil Dead Rises, Evil Dead Rise at least, I'm still captivated. Like, how are they going to get out of this situation? I'm still like wanting to know because we don't have a hero backing us up with like. We don't have an Ash Williams necessarily in Evil Dead Rise, so we're not sure how they're going to get out of this. There's no like savior essentially. Like this movie, it's Pope's Exorcist. Like he's the superhero in this movie. He's going to save everybody. You're like, great, go him. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, how is this woman going to get out of this situation where she's got these demons everywhere? There's no way out of this building. I'm invested in that story. That's what I'm invested in.
My counter to that is that
without there being
any kind of like structure to the story, it really is like, well, how did she get out of it? How did she get out of it?
For some reason, when you stab them in the face with the scissors, they pause for 30 seconds.
For 30 seconds, but even beyond that. So she stabs for.
They have to come up with a plan eventually, right? And then she looks at the older records.
Then they go out.
They were trying to bust down the door, and they were like, "Well, screw that."
They can't bust through the door, so then they go in the elevator, and then the elevator fills with blood, and then the creature thing of all of them combined is trying to grab at them through the ceiling. And it really is like, why? Like, at least with Pope's Exorcist, there was a reason why this demon didn't just kill everybody. Because that was my question with Evil Dead was, okay, if this demon can do anything, why doesn't it just kill everybody right away? Why doesn't it just stop everybody's heart? What is the limiting factor here? And that's why I brought up The Conjuring, because The Conjuring, like I said, in the original Evil Dead, Ash is like, why are you torturing me? And as an audience member, you're saying, yeah. Why? How is this guy immune? But you don't care because the movie's so entertaining because it's quirky and creative. But once you strip the quirky and the fun and creative stuff away and you treat it seriously, you need something to orient the story. And in the remake, they did that. The book oriented the story. In Rise, they didn't have anything to orient the story. So I'm sitting there going, again, like Scott Evil, hey, demon,
what do you mean?
Why don't you
say orient the story? You want what do you mean by orient the story?
Orient the story as in provide structure for why one thing happens and the next. What is?
Yeah,
like,
they do
what
do that.
Was stopping? Like, okay, in the remake,
they do.
Listen. In the remake, it's like once it feasts on 5 souls, then blood will rain from the sky, and then something happens. Whatever happens in the remake. In Rise, it's just like, I don't know, mom's just going to kill everybody. And then when they go out into the hallway, it's like dead by dawn. And then they get into the elevator and
it's a survivor story. They have to they're trying to get out of there before they die. And they know they're up against terrible odds.
If you could just fill an elevator with blood, then like, how did they get out of that? Why didn't they just drown in blood? What thing did she do that allowed her to get out of that situation? I mean, that's what I mean. Like this demon can do anything. So what's the limiting factor? Doesn't
the blood overweigh like the elevator, and that's why it comes down?
Then why didn't the demon stop that from happening? Because it can do anything. So what's the limiting factor here? That's where I just go, this is just chaos. Fair. This is just a bunch of random crap. And then it leads to a whole sequence of putting the family through a wood chipper and a chainsaw, because obligatory chainsaw and like the obligatory shotgun and gobbledygook that eventually ends in a girl who's like, so anyway, Jenny, I totally slept through the night because the storm, I don't know. Oh my God, a demon possessed me, because the demon didn't have a body. I guess it was just floating around. Like it's just, that's what I mean by not providing any context. The book used to provide, in every Evil Dead movie, the fucking book provides some kind of context. It's like, do this and this will happen, or you fail to do that. Like, hey, Ash, you fail to say the sacred words, then there'll be consequences. Yeah. But instead, Evil Dead Rise was just a bunch of random gobbledygook. And I'm saying that with this movie, there was at least some kind, there were rules. It was like, okay, the devil plays off of your sins. Your sin, like that was a heavy theme. Your sins will be found out, both their sins as individuals and the church's sins, right? And the church's big sin was that the fucking Spanish Inquisition, a major historical event, was actually an undertaking of Satan himself. That's a really interesting concept. So that's why for me, it's if we're comparing, and I agree, it's towards the bottom of the list, but
I just think the tonal incongruity is what screws me up on it.
By the third act, yes. By the
well,
third
it's just
act,
like it again. It's the whole movie is like, all right, what is this movie? Because like to me, the other major problem is like when I think of this movie and after watching it, I'm like, is this like a parody movie that you would see in another movie? Like that's like based off the plot of the movie? Because I'm like, this seems like a parody. This seems like something. This seems like the movie that it's like, all right, well, what's the next movie? Oh yeah, we're gonna go see Pope's Exorcist 2, the Dead Reckoning, and then it's like a shot of like Russell Crowe with sunglasses and like shotguns and water pistol, and I'm like, what is this?
I think they should have both been on his Vespa at the end, and then freeze frame.
Yeah,
like the guys holding the bag. That's
why this movie to me is not as great as you're like. It's all connected and there's context. I'm like, yeah, it leans heavily on cliche tropes that I've seen in 50 other movies.
That's why we're
and
low.
That's to me.
That's why That's why I want to put it right below Renfield again, because Renfield at least was fun and it had like its little character arc with Renfield himself. But like, we're putting this low. There's no doubt about it that we're putting this low because it is
below Evil Dead though.
Like I'll put it this way: between this and Evil Dead, you do have this character of Gabriele Amorth. You don't have that in Evil Dead. All you have in Evil Dead Rise is a bunch of meaningless gore. That's what you have.
I don't think so.
Then what do you have? What do you have in that movie?
Like we've talked about it, but you kind of just brush over it like it doesn't exist. Because like there's a whole theme about motherhood and parenting and like how do you survive in a world with that?
Is it fully realized?
I think at least it's more about like, okay, well, what is being a parent? It's
I think it's more about that than whatever Pope's.
But it's never like we have to talk about every specific thing about it. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, I think it's there. It's not that it doesn't exist. I just think that you're like, oh, it's not fully realized. It's not there. And I'm like, it's there.
I think maybe it realizes it better than Pope's.
Just because you take flour and butter and whatever else you need and eggs and you throw them into a pan and you
it doesn't even have to be about that.
It doesn't become a cake. It doesn't become a cake. Just because you put in an element of woman's pregnant and she's considering an abortion, and then you have a single mom with kids, and then mom says you're parasites. It doesn't mean that a full character arc occurred. Just because we have this argument every fucking time we talk about Secret Service. Just because Bond throws a bitch fit and says he's going to quit, it doesn't mean that the whole movie is about him considering life outside the service. Just because he was a little bitch in the opening. Just because you throw an element here and an element there doesn't mean that themes are made good on. They need to congeal. They need to bridge over time. And at least you had that in this movie. The only downside to this movie, in my eyes, is that by the third act, it looks like Harry Potter. Because it's like, well, what do you do? And like on that note, I thought that maybe it would have been a better move if the two backstories of the two gentlemen weren't two young, attractive women. It kind of was confusing at the end where like, you know, like both their backstories, both their sins were two young, attractive women, to where it was like kind of confusing. Like, who are these people at the end? But that was and also Creed 3. Remember Creed 3 also had that. Creed 3 had an ending that was kind of abstract, where these two guys were duking it out in the ring, and the audience disappeared, and suddenly they were like back in juvie together, and you know.
I liked that though.
So I like that too, but that's this kind of had that same thing, right? Where suddenly you had abstract stuff going on, but this at least has the context of it being satanic deceit going on. So I'm always just trying to draw parallels between all these movies, but
think
overall, like if I'm truly being outvoted, that's fine because we're in the neighborhood. The neighborhood is below Renfield, above Magic Mike's, which literally is just Evil Dead versus Pope's Exorcist. I think this is a better movie in general and doesn't rely on shock and gore. I think Evil Dead Rise relies on shock and gore. If I'm truly being outvoted, that's fine, as long as it's in the neighborhood. But this is regardless of this being just another exorcism movie or having fat Russell Crowe flying around on a Vespa or whatever. I front to back, better characterization, better setup and payoff with those characters. Megan / missing style third act. What do we do? Let's just have a big wizard battle. That's definitely a negative. But when I think back on Evil Dead, I just think, yes, has thematic elements there that didn't congeal, has terrible book ending to shove in Evil Dead stuff with the cabin and obligatory Evil Dead stuff, but didn't really have anything to say other than just, hey, look at all these shocking gore elements. Whereas this movie at least felt like a real movie up until the third act wizard fight.
Yeah. To go back to your cake metaphor, for me, Evil Dead Rise is a pretty complete cake that tastes good and like, whatever flavor. And then this movie is a cake and you're eating it, and then all of a sudden there's like a candy corn in it, and it's like, what the why is there a chunk of pineapple in here? It's just, I don't know, some weird stuff thrown.
You know what I would say? I think a better metaphor for what you're saying is probably more like, oh, there's a piece of chicken in this cake. Like that's just that's more.
What are those elements though? Like, what does the chicken represent?
The goofy stuff.
Well, but what are the goofy things? What are the goofy things? Because if it's Gabriel stuff, like I thought Gabriel.
I understand,
really
like
beginning to
the
end.
character should.
He was unique.
Like he needs to cope with the weird stuff he deals with.
Yeah.
But maybe they set it up better or something rather than him just doing like cuckoo to people randomly that riding a Vespa with funny glasses and a hat.
Dude, that opening was nothing but a joke to him. The opening where he's like, "Oh yeah, you're Satan. If you're Satan, what's my name?" Like the opening was presented seriously, but it
sets up that he sets up that like this is what he does. He does exorcism, but he doesn't even do that. No, things for me that like bothered me even more. Again, like I'm gonna harp on the cliches of this movie, and it's not just the typical like. It just feels like the movie runs through like the screenwriters were like, okay, we got to do exorcism movie. All right, run through all the scenes. All right, how does he get possessed? Oh, there's a creepy scene. Something happens. We got to have like
the kid's eyes are like.
We have the needle drop of music for a reason. Like, oh, that's creative. He has his headphones in, and when he takes it off, you find out that he was actually listening to that music, and it's like for 2 seconds, and I'm like, that wasn't even played for anything. It was just so they could throw the song "Daddy Isn't Dead" or "Daddy's Dead" in there, and I was like it just felt like a very cheaply, poorly executed thing where they were just like, okay, let's throw this element in. Okay, I've seen that in a movie once. Let's put this in. Oh, we need to have the girl, like it was like a producer like going over the guy's head to be, well, we need the scene where the girl like climbs on the walls. Well, why? Well, because I agree. That's what people want to see.
I agree.
Those are the things where I'm like, again, that's where I harp on this movie is like, those are the elements for this movie where I'm like, yeah, this feels like somebody said.
They did that. Like Evil Dead, the first thing the mom does is she does the.
Right, she does.
And crawling. And then
but I don't get
I feel like this movie was supposed to be more grounded in actual religious stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's
like, Asmodeus is so powerful he can possess multiple people at once, and he's trying to do the Spanish Inquisition Part 2.
Yeah, and it just felt like that's where the movie felt like to me. I'm like, this movie's going off the rails for me really quickly. It's like, I'm enjoying it in like I enjoyed it in like a kind of a guilty pleasure way where I was like, okay, this is kind of fun because it's like
there's a lot of fast
like Ghostbusters with Pope, kind of. But
this
then
American family somehow inherits this abbey, and they're restoring
it was the
to
like, whatever,
sell it to make money. It's like,
Yeah,
how
like,
are
that was
you
the
affording to restore it then? Like,
everyone's already left. We're not even restoring it. And then, like, why do you that the
English
brother
is
like,
the devil's language.
By this point in the movie, there's other parts where I was like, by this point in the movie, the brothers like there's some bad stuff going on. Like, it's not just like he's sick. It's like, oh, he's spouting like bad words and he's got scrapes and and there's something weird demonic about him. And then at that same point in the movie, they're like, oh no, well, like, who gives a shit if the the daughter's bedroom's like 2 doors down. Like, it's not like they can't get, like, it's things like that. Where
I said this about Evil Dead.
Why was it that knock?
The first thing you should do is tie them up.
The
first thing is, especially if they're scratching their face off, the first thing you should do is tie them up. The moment somebody looks like they might be possessed, tie them. Like in The Exorcist, they do that.
It would be funnier if they tie oven mitts to his hands.
Well, it took a while for them to do that.
Remember when the sister, where they incapacitated the sister, and it was like we're pretty sure she's dead, but she might not be. And the brother was like, I went ahead and tied her up. And I remember being like, good work. That's smart. Yeah. But I think overall though, for me, because that setup stuff I don't really care about. The setup of the movie is, regardless of the financials of the family, the setup is, we're here to restore this thing. I don't need to see their books. I don't need to know any more than that. But overall, and I can tell I'm being outvoted here, I don't mind. But for me, based off everything I said about Evil Dead, for me, what it comes down to is context. It just comes down to the orientation of the story. And I think that all the elements were set up, all the, the characters and the backstories, all those elements were set up so that when you execute on the exorcism scene and all that, the stakes and what's going on and you understand the weird imagery going on. Whereas with Evil Dead, you have like, we're sisters and you're pregnant and all that, but it really was just a bunch of random gobbledygook. Like, can you imagine watching the exorcism scene in Pope's Exorcist?
I don't think it's any
not
more
knowing
random.
their backstories, and you just have like chicks showing up, pulling their titties out and saying like "fuck me" and like eating birds and shit. Like, you would be confused, and that was my point with Evil Dead Rise. Was like, this is just a bunch of random gobbledygook that is relying on ultra violence for it to have any kind of like, I just want to watch robots punch each other. I just want to watch a demon eat glass and then puke bugs. And I'm like, yeah, but a better story sets things up, pays those things off, has some kind of structure, and people want to give it a pass. The Nances of the world want to be like, well, I just want to watch robots punch each other. But I think like Nance, I think like in the Quantum episode, you in the Quantum episode, you brought up Pacific Rim, and I'm like, Pacific Rim is not a good example of a meaningless, like, just a nothing story. Pacific Rim isn't just robots punching each other. It actually sets up characters and stakes and all that. Like, it's not like it's not a good example of just like a stupid movie. It is a quote stupid premise, but it's really well executed.
Mm-hmm.
If it truly was, you hit play and a robot stands up and a monster stands up and they start punching each other, you turn it off within a couple minutes because you'd be like, I don't care. But because Guillermo is not an idiot, he sets up the characters that are in the robot and the reason why the monsters are there, and there's context there. So it's not just robots fighting monsters, but there's
I didn't think that was
context to it.
Yeah,
and that's what I think
again,
Evil Dead misses.
I think Evil Dead
it's
at least
pretty similar though. Evil Dead Rise, there's a random bank vault that the boy sneaks into. In this movie, they inherit an abbey that they go to that just so happens to be the site of this crap going on. Like, it's relatively similar.
Yeah, and then but also it's like at the end of the day, it's, will the family survive? Like, that's the stakes. Will the family survive? Both of these movies.
They don't really set up the family like I said before.
They definitely set up the family in Evil Dead. What are you talking
in Evil
about?
Dead, I wish they kind of would have just once mom was possessed, I wish they would have tied her up, and they eventually put her in the hallway. But one of my biggest beefs was that they banished her to the hallway, but meanwhile the girl has been infected, so she immediately starts killing everybody again. But I would have enjoyed some time with the aunt and the 3 kids before the murder fest started again. But we didn't do that. It was like we had time. They had time before the possession where she's like, hey, I bought you this mug. And then it was like, Dad's gone. And it was like done right away. But it would have been beneficial to the story if once mom was possessed and banished, either she's tied up or she's in the hallway or whatever, whatever. Mom's banished.
Yeah.
And it's just aunt and surrogate mom and the 3 kids. And she's like, they're like, what do we do? And she's like, I don't know. Like suddenly she has to be a mom and she has no experience. And so she's freaking out and they're freaking out. And that would have their characters would have blossomed because we would have seen them under stress. But we never got that. What we got were scenes of them standing around while mom, one by one, shoved screwdrivers in their fucking eyes or whatever. And then she gets banished. And then immediately the daughter starts killing the brother. And I mean, it's just chaos the whole time, just meaningless chaos, as opposed to, I would have loved 5 minutes of scenes, 5 to 10 minutes of just surrogate mom hanging out with the kids. And then we're off and running. But the movie breezes over that because we need obligatory like blood and scratching, and I need to eat the glass to get the creepy crawlies out. Like, just fuck that fucking movie. Anyway, if you guys think it's better and I'm being outvoted, no worries. But Evil Dead, the difference is this: Evil Dead with slight tweaks could have been so much better with slight tweaks. And I think that's, I said from the get-go, I went into Evil Dead with high expectations, I'll admit, and was disappointed. I went into Pope with low expectations, and it was like, this is
I think
pretty good.
Pope needs more major tweaks.
What are those major tweaks?
Than Evil Dead does.
What are those major tweaks?
Just aligning the tone.
Well, what is that tone?
The less goofy or more goofy. I don't know. Like just making it make more sense.
I think, are you talking about the goofy, like the character?
Yeah.
But that was set up from the get-go and carried through to the end. He was like happy-go-lucky priest the whole time, and that was the best part of the movie, was him just being like, because any other exorcism movie is like everything is sacred and the priest is but he was goofy, and he was just like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Like he was like, that's where he was kind of like James Bond, where he didn't value his life. Like Bond cracks. I
feel like he should have been goofier.
Bond is like, I'm gonna die. Bond has accepted death, and this guy felt the same way. That's where that James Bond analogy is relevant, because his whole thing is like, you might as well have fun with it. We're battling Satan, dude. Quit taking everything so seriously. You shouldn't take it seriously because the devil doesn't like jokes, so you should take this as a joke. And that was fresh to me. I appreciate, and that didn't come out of nowhere. That was in the beginning, and then that carried all the way through to the end. So
I didn't get any ice cream in this one. I was like, I need something new. I can't just keep doing the ice cream thing.
Bring me ice cream. And they give him like Haagen-Dazs. He's like, the other fucking ice cream. You mean Baskin Robbins? Yes.
I think Gabriel should have given him some Italian gelato.
This is an ice cream.
I want gelato.
Remember, you got to do that. Bring me Baskin Robbins.
We all miss Baskin Robbins. They don't have that here.
I've made my case though. If I haven't convinced you guys, no big. McCurdy, are you feeling like you're gonna puke?
Feeling better.
Hope he does.
Good. Then let's talk for another 6 hours about.
Hang out till he pukes.
I'm gonna hate you more. Where's that mute button again?
Yeah. But yeah, I've spoken my piece. I had the least amount of notes on this movie. I've
I
gone
would
through
have.
what I would like to go through.
I would have rather. I think also on
I had
top of
no
it, it just
notes.
doesn't help when we've seen 4 horror movies back to back to back. And
4?
yeah, Beau Is Afraid is like barely a horror movie,
It's like
but
a
it's still kind of
psychological-
in the same kind of
was it
camp.
Renfield, Beau, and then Evil Dead,
Beau,
and
then Evil Dead, then this. I was like, I'm
yeah,
I'm
and
exhausted.
we're in that weird stage between spring and summer that feels like fall, but like
Yeah, it's cold again.
all
Yeah.
the same. It's like, wait, is this October? No, it's May. why are we watching all these horror movies?
Yeah, no, but spring and fall weather-wise are the same.
Well, next week will make more sense,
It's like
right?
reverse fall, you know.
It's reverse fall or
Yeah.
reverse spring if you're in fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, weather-wise.
Yes. So
Weather-wise. So I will be happy to watch a movie that isn't about isn't a horror film, isn't about possession, isn't about gore, Satanism.
but
Like
we're
it'll
doing
just be refreshing.
I
This
hear
weekend, though,
Guardians is all about animal cruelty, though.
Fuck.
It is Guardians is next though, right?
Yes, Guardians
think
comes
so.
out. Let me double check that. But yeah, Guardians comes out
You
this
guys
week.
want to do an episode tomorrow on Tetris?
Maybe we'll see.
You guys wanna watch Tetris?
That's a possible maybe, but I don't have Apple Plus, so maybe you and Nans and our boy Kevra go and do an episode about.
I have a question. Are our names
Tetris.
backwards because of Exorcist stuff, or is that an accident?
Because of Beelzebub, Satana.
Yeah, it's because of
Almighty.
movies.
He reversed all our names.
Yeah, I did it because I was sick and I was like, let's be fun. And then I was like, Charlie, you should do it. And then we all did it. And it was fun.
I didn't do it.
Also
Very
blows my mind. Super Mario Brothers passed $1 billion mark.
That doesn't blow anybody's mind. We all
Blows
knew that
my mind. It makes
Shut
so
your
much
mouth.
money.
We all knew that.
And we'll get a Zelda
one
movie.
will ever see it again.
And then we'll get a Zelda movie.
I have been keeping up with Kevra's videos, but part of me is like,
I don't always agree with what he says.
Don't make a Zelda. How could you make a movie about an elf-looking dude going around collecting things? I just make video games. Like that was my whole thing with Mario. It was like, no, just make video games. Like fuck making a Mario movie. Just make video games. It's like, what would you rather do? What you guys, would you rather watch the Super Mario Brothers movie or would you rather play Mario Odyssey?
I'd rather watch the Angry Birds movie.
Okay, that wasn't what I fucking asked, but
it's not about rather watching it, but it's like if you're already a fan,
has anyone?
You're already a fan of the thing. You want a celebration of it.
Did anyone watch the movie?
That makes you want to watch the movie.
But no, I'd rather play Mario Kart. I'd rather play I would rather play the games. There was nothing in that movie that elevated it out of video game status, and that's the thing. And that's a lot of what Kevra's videos have been about. Are he's like, well, it'd be really boring. In his latest video,
he's making the argument about like if you're making a Zelda movie.
Look at It Chapter 2, and It Chapter 2 has this whole
it's
like
it's a whole thing of people
segment
getting something.
They all have to go find their memento or whatever, and it sucks. And that movie
it's just an and then yeah, it's like an and then versus it being like, but if we don't get this because that kind of thing, which is what he talks about in his video. And like that is something I agree. I've always agreed with.
Ocarina of Time. I would rather play.
I've always agreed with. I would
rather play Ocarina of Time than watch.
But I want to see a Zelda movie. So shut up.
There's a really good. Actually, there's a really good movie of Ocarina of Time. Oh wait. No, it's just a fucking video game because guess what? The fucking medium matches the medium that it comes in matches the story. It's better. It should only ever be a video game, depending on how you do it. But
how dare you? Anyway, next week is next week's Guardians.
Hang on, back on point. Am I being out? I assume I'm being outvoted. You guys want to?
You're being outvoted.
Okay, being outvoted. No worries. I like the department.
McCurdy and I decided that regardless of what you said, we would go against you together.
Exorcist.
Before this episode.
There was a coup.
There was a coup.
It was a coup.
Just for fun.
Both fired from the band.
I quit.
Actually, you're fired from the band. No, I quit.
I quit.
Next week is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Following week, we have to figure out what we're going to go see. So that might be a week where we're like, oh, let's go see this dumb movie
options?
that came out. Well, okay, so the big movie, because Wikipedia at least has like the schedule list, and usually the first movie they put up there is the big movie that comes out that week. So the big movie for that week is Book Club, the next chapter, starring none other than Diane Keaton, Jane Fonda, and a bunch of other.
Is that the 80 for Brady books?
It's like an 80 for Brady looking
80
movie.
for books.
It's two of the same. Yeah, two of the same actresses. It's a sequel.
Okay.
Maybe we see.
No, thank you.
I don't know. Nance,
you go see it with your mom. You and your mom.
I will. I'll take my mom.
And
there's also a bunch of other movies. There's a bunch of other movies that come out.
Anybody just listening, we officially put The Pope's Exorcist at position 15, below Evil Dead Rise, above Magic Mike 3, Magic Mike's Last Dance.
Yeah.
And then after that week is Fast X.
Oh
with
you guys better watch all the Fast and Furious movies before that.
I might actually watch all of them because I've missed 2 of them.
I love the Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah,
they're stupid, but that's why I like them.
That's another thing though, Nance. You said, I think in the Quantum episode, you're like, if I'm watching Fast and Furious movies, I expect cars, and I'm like, yes, that is the essence. The essence with Bond, the essence is James Bond, the character, and
but more cars doesn't equal more better.
But more shutters
Fast movies are definitely better.
No,
better cars, hotter women, more shutters,
more punching,
more Scots.
Yeah.
Less Paul Walker.
Oh God. Oh Jesus. Paul Walker, he's in hell. Sorry, just to get us back on theme. So anyway, this is one of our shorter episodes because, come on. But any other?
It could have been much shorter.
Anything else, fellas?
Oh yeah, I do have something nice to say about the movie.
Go ahead.
Okay, so early on in the movie, we glazed over this point, but I remember it when I saw it. And I was like, oh yeah, there's that point.
Right.
So you know how we were talking about the other priest, who's the one who's like sleeping with the one chick and everything.
Yeah.
Like there's something that actor does.
Nice pull, priest. Like that.
right.
Nice.
She's like really hot and everything.
Nice.
There's this one bit early on in the movie where I was like, I don't know if it was his acting. I don't know if it was the way they directed it. I don't know if it was the edit. I don't know what it was, but there was that subtle hint of the way he reacts to Julius' handshake and like, oh, are you going to be here for a long time? That I got this feeling that I was like, this dude's fucking. Like, that's what I got out of that.
Yeah.
Whole thing. I was like,
remember, he's the guy from It Follows.
He seemed interested.
Yeah, he seemed like he wanted to bang her. Like there was something. I was like, this guy fucks. That's what I was thinking as I was watching that scene. I was like, great job, movie. Well played. Well played.
Yeah.
And then we learned obviously his story and all this stuff. But I was like, that was the moment I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It was a nice thing to say.
That is a whole movie about,
I saved theology, a little bit. Do we have
God,
a toast?
Satan and all that shit, and all you took from it was that this priest fucks. So great job, McCurdy. Anyway,
but
wow.
We're toasting to Gabriele Amorth, aka Russell Crowe,
aka. Let me put it up here.
Let me sensually lick the salt off my glass.
Making movies,
writing songs, fighting around the world.
Making movies, making songs. Making movies.
Oh, I thought it was making movie, writing songs.
Fighting around the world. Come on, Tugger!
We got time. Let's find out. Hold on. Let's find out. Let's just look it up real quick. Be sure. Just be sure. So we're not wrong. Fighting around the world.
It cannot be understated how much South Park impressed upon all of us growing up.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was all we talked about at the lunch table.
Yes. So I remember having a discussion with my parents saying, okay, this show,
it's dirty, but it's smart.
It's dirty, but it's incredibly intelligent, and I would like to watch it because of those reasons. It is a lot of immature poop and pee and Jew jokes, but on top of all of that is
you can't say pee.
My folks were like, okay, but then a family friend came over and left, and she was like, "Oh, South Park," and I was doing this. I was like, "Stop!" So I was like, "Don't turn it on while the family's around." She's like, "Oh, this show's great," and it was the South Park episode. Sorry, of course it was. It was the South Park Lord of the Rings episode where it was where it's
porno.
like porno. Of course, that's 9, and it was
this
like Butters is like trying to molest everybody. And this episode's so funny, and I was like, "Stop, turn it off." But it was too late. My folks were like, "Is this what this show is?" And I was like,
"Sometimes,
yeah, sometimes, But so at that point, it was like a battle. But I was like, "No, it's actually really fucking intelligent, and it is." Anybody who knows South Park knows it's really goddamn smart.
Yeah, it is making movies, making songs. You were correct that one. I always thought it was writing songs
because it's ingrained in my brain, dude. I can't rewrite what is on the like.
But to be fair, I haven't watched it.
ROM. That's not RAM. That's ROM. That is ROM.
Huh?
You know what I'm saying?
No. I know what you're saying. I'm downloading what you're saying. Stop the computer. Stop all the downloading. I'm a computer.
Stop the computer. Hey, kid.
Hey, kid. That's ingrained in my brain. So, Charlie and I back 8th grade all the time. That's all we ever watched were those videos. It's great times.
Anyway. All right. So, are we done?
Yeah.
Good. So, McCurdy can go puke Satan out.
I'm actually feeling better now. I might
put it on the Discord.
I can control your slides. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, you know,
do whatever I want. Okay. This goes out to, as I said in the opener,
he's the best part of the movie.
Part of this movie. The reason why we wanted to see it in the first
place.
Who
wants a body massage?
Bottom massage machine. Go. K1. Yeah. Of course, K1 would know what we're talking about.
Oh God. Body massage.
But
ain't no cooking.
We could sit here all night and quote G.I. Joe videos, but
oh my God, millennial humor right there.
Pork chop sandwiches.
Oh shit!
Jesus Christ! Out of here.
Anyway, before we go off on a run, periodically we do. Okay, Russell Crowe is the man. I sincerely hope, especially with him losing the Dark Universe, I do hope that there is a Pope's Exorcist cinematic universe, because as much as this movie was kind of whatever,
the second one will be better.
Watch it continue. I would gladly keep watching it because why not? There's no cinematic universe of an exorcist going around the world collecting like in
fighting
video
around
games,
the world with
fighting around the world. Yeah. Making movies, making songs, and fighting demons around the world. So anyway, hopefully Fat Russell Crowe keeps zipping around the universe on his Vespa scooter. That's all I gotta say. Where is our play us out? Got it queued up, fellas.
Oh wait, hold on. Are we toasting here?
We're toasting.
I toasted and drank long ago.
Well, let's toast again. Dude. Raise it back up, you fat
My
fuck.
Empty margarita glass.
Yeah, hang on. You gotta Nance, you gotta empty. Oh wait, no, he said, give him the stick.
Don't give him the stick.
Give him the stick. All right. Russell Crowe, you're the best part of this movie. Hope you make more, dude. Please make more. Cheers. And fighting around the world.